So what we're going to be covering in this session is the new features in PowerBuilder 2025 R2. Disclaimer. And let's look at the agenda. So we're going to talk about changes in the code editor, talk about dynamic DPI support, IDE usability and productivity enhancements, multilingual runtime resources, SVG image support, CrypterObject enhancements, WebBrowser enhancements, RibbonView enhancements, SMTPClient enhancements, DataWindow and DataStore enhancements, jump enhancements, the removal of .NET 4.8 dependencies, source control enhancements, support for SQL Server Datetime 2, solution enhancements, advanced executable security flags, PowerServer new features, and PowerClient optimizations. So a little bit about myself. I know PowerBuilder, Oracle PL SQL, Java, C#, C++, and the major open source project I'm involved in is the PFC libraries. Just a little bit about the company I work for. Okay, so in the code editor, there are now error and warning marks. So syntax errors are now underscored with a red wavy line. We now have rectangular or column selection. So you can select text in a rectangular block for batch editing. So what you do is you hold down the Alt button while dragging to select a block of text. Virtual space means that you can place the cursor to the right of a line beyond where the line ends. Customizable code blocks means that you can declare code regions with pound region and pound end region to create your own collapsible code blocks. Outlining has been enhanced. The code folding and unfolding has been improved. There's an option now to format a document or a selection. There's an option now where you can use the Alt up and down arrows to move lines up and down without doing a cut and paste. And now we have cursor navigation, similar to a web browser. So if you have been working in one area of code, you scroll up to check to see what maybe the variable declarations are. You can navigate, instead of trying to scroll down and find out where you're at, you can use the cursor navigation to just directly go back to where you were before. Bookmark commands have been added to the main menu, context menu, and toolbar. Replace all now displays the count of the replace operations. Rename symbol allows you to, within a script, rename identifiers such as variables, functions, or objects. So you just right-click and hit rename. Now this won't apply outside of the current document. It's not a global search and replace throughout the entire application. And then the quick info has been optimized. There were some missing tooltips for certain functions, variables, and classes. Those have been added. Parameter information has been optimized. There were some missing parameter hints for some function calls. And then completion enhancements. Now there are autocomplete is supported for enum members, for global functions, variables, and structures. And there are clickable URLs. So if you've typed a URL into the editor, you can now use Control single click to launch that URL. There's also short key enhancements. So Control F12 is the jump to. Toggle comment on comment is Alt M and Alt N. And then convert case from between uppercase and lowercase, Control Shift U and Control U. We move on to dynamic DPI support. So high DPI support was added in 2025, but what it didn't do is it didn't dynamically change as the DPI changed. That has been introduced now. So now when the scale changes, the windows will automatically resize for the new DPI. There's a new function called get DPI for window, which will tell you what the current DPI is. And there is a new event, DPI change, that will get triggered when the DPI is changed. There is IDE theme support. Now, this is not your application. This is the IDE. Now we have the theming for the IDE. There are 3 options: flat design dark, flat design light, and then do not theme, which is just the original way that PowerBuilder IDE looked. You can switch between the dark and light without restarting the IDE, but if you switch between do not use theme and the other options, then you have to restart the IDE to get it to actually work. The database painter, when you are in the database painter and you've typed you've got the iSQL window open and you're putting in some script there and you're running it and you've got some results, all that now shows you which connection that you're using. The expression window has been, they've made it resizable so that you can deal with long expressions. The migration window has been improved by resizing it and up to 150% and making it resizable. The debug window has been modified. It's also resizable, and it also has word wrap. The search library entries window has been enhanced. The search for field now has a history, the same as the find, so that if you want to go back and repeat a previous search, it's easier to do. And then you can limit the scope to certain pibbles. So if you have some idea of which pibble the code you're looking for is in, you can select a certain pibble rather than searching across the entire application. So when IDE theming is enabled, public, private, and protected methods have different color icons to help you distinguish between them. The quick watch window has been enhanced. Double-clicking an expression will open the display value window, and now there is a copy value button. The data window column specifications have been improved. The DB name column accepts longer input and is no longer restrained by the initial column width. Used to be that if you started typing and realized that the column width was too narrow, you'd have to resize the column to type longer text. And then you can copy values out of the name and DB name columns. The system tree context menus have been enhanced. For PowerBuilder objects, copy name is added, and then on the target files, you can right-click there and say, and there's an optimize option which will optimize all the pibbles at once. So that way you don't have to go through and optimize the pibbles individually. The help about window has been enhanced. There's a copy info button so that you can grab all the information about what particular version of PowerBuilder you're using down to the build number more easily. There's multilingual runtime resources. So this applies to the text that it comes from the runtime DLLs. That text has been separated out now into language files. The language files are located in a folder underneath the runtime. There's also a custom language folder that's provided so that if you wanted to provide alternative wording for some of the runtime text, you can do that. And then the PowerBuilder runtime packager allows you to select which of the language packages are included in the deployment. There are also new methods that are added. Set language, which takes a language type enumerated parameter, and get language, which returns a language type enumerated parameter. So SVG image support. Particular reason this is introduced is now that we have high DPI and these windows are being automatically scaled for us, image formats like bitmap, JPEG, and PNG often become blurry when scaled. And that's the advantage of SVG, is that SVGs remain crisp as they're being scaled. So now you can use SVG images in your application, and they will look better on higher DPI applications. All of the picture controls now support selecting SVG in addition to bitmap, JPEG, or PNG. There is a new runtime file that is required if you're going to be using SVG. That's the pbsvg.dll. And there is a new flat design blue Friends SVG theme that automatically includes SVG images for that theme. There are some limitations. Primarily, the application icon and the window icon do not support selecting SVG. SVG images will not appear disabled when the control they're on is disabled. They will remain. They will retain their original look. When you're using a native PDF exporting, the SVG images are converted to a bitmap format during that process, so that the images will not be scalable within that PDF document. And although the SVG does display correctly in Windows and DataWindows, when you print, once again, printing converts it to a bitmap, and scaling, therefore, causes some distortion. The CrypterObject has been enhanced with a new algorithm for symmetric encryption and decryption, the GCM. It requires that you use the operation mode CTR. It supports lengths of 128, 192, and 256 bytes. It uses a 12-byte initialization vector, and they've added an additional argument for additional authentication data. And so this has to do with the symmetric encrypt and symmetric decrypt functions that have been modified to add that additional argument, as well as to take this new algorithm type. And for asymmetric signature and verification, specifically the asymmetric sign and asymmetric verify sign, there is a new standard signature standard argument. It supports PKCS1v15. That's the default value. So if it's not provided, that's what it will be set to. The other option is PSS. And there's a new hash algorithm argument. And it supports values of SHA-1, SHA-224, SHA-256, SHA-384, SHA-512, SHA-3224, SHA-3256, SHA-3384, and SHA-3512. The web browser has been enhanced. There is a dev tool property that determines whether or not the browser's built-in developer tool is enabled. Note that the default is true. You you want to make sure this is set to false in your deployed applications. The password autosave property is new, and it determines whether or not the browser shows the save password prompt when users log in. And the clear browsing data function is new, and it provides the ability to clear browsing data programmatically. RibbonView, there's a new option to double-click on a category tab header, and that will quickly collapse or expand the ribbon bar. That is behavior that you can see in Microsoft Office. Now you can have it in your PowerBuilder applications. The quick access tooltips are also displayed now in the Windows taskbar. And there's a new tool item space property, similar to the spacing property for menus. So it allows you to put some spacing between buttons. SMTPClient has been enhanced. The add attachment function now has the option to provide a blob rather than file as the attachment. So there's a file blob argument, and then there's a file name argument, which allows you to provide the name. There is a delivery receipt property, so that the email will request that a receipt message be sent back to you when the mail is received. Similarly, there is a read receipt that would be sent back to you optionally when the email is read, assuming the recipient allows that message to be sent. In the data window and DataStore, there is a get DW object method now that takes the name of data columns, computed fields, or controls and returns a DW object that references those for further operations. Jump has been enhanced. There's an option that's been added to the main menu. Shortcut key support. The Control F12 shortcut key has been added for the jump command, and Control click navigation. So if you are in your code and you see a variable and you're not sure if it's defined as a long or an integer or whatever, you can control click on it and the editor will move back to the declaration so you can see what the data type is. And then cursor-based recognition, what this means is that when you want to do a jump, you no longer have to highlight the entire word. It recognizes the word that the cursor is in and will do the jump based on that. The .NET 4.0 dependency has been removed, and the Sybase.PowerBuilder.net interop DLL has been renamed to Appian.PowerBuilder.net interop.dll. In addition, there are new runtime files, Appian PowerBuilder.net interop steps JSON, Appian PowerBuilder.net interop runtime config JSON, and nethost DLL. In addition, those runtime files have been moved into the runtime directory. Previously, the Sybase.PowerBuilder.net interop DLL was originally put in the same directory as the PowerBuilder IDE executable. And it no longer requires COM registration. You simply deploy the runtime files and it will work. Source control enhancements. We now have the ability to do a get rebase. What this does essentially is stashes your changes, does a pull to get the latest changes in the branch you're working on, and then reapplies or restores the stash of the changes that you had stashed. So if you want to ensure you don't get a merge conflict when you go to commit your changes, this is how you avoid that, by bringing down, or how you address it in advance, I guess, is by bringing down the latest changes from the branch you're working on, reapplying your local commits, and then dealing with any conflicts then, rather than finding out when you go to commit and push to the repository. Also has git fetch. This goes and gets the changes that are on the remote branch without altering your local work. Just lets you see what those changes are. And the last item here, the git branch name now displays in the status bar, so it's really easy to tell which particular branch you are currently working on. Support's been added for the SQL Server Datetime 2. The Datetime 2 has a precision of 7 digits for the seconds. And so in order to fully support that data type from SQL Server, all of the datetime functions within PowerBuilder have been updated to continue to carry the support for that level of precision for seconds. So get item date time, get item time, get date value, all now have a precision of 7 digits in the second. Same with all the other functions that are listed here. Enhancements to the solution format. The IDE no longer automatically performs incremental builds when running or debugging. When deploying application, the output window now includes details about skip PDs and summary statistics. The memory consumption has been optimized for really large projects. And they have fixed multiple issues in the IDE and the compiler to improve stability and reliability of the solution format. Advanced executable security flags. The IDE now allows you to indicate that you want to have data execution prevention, ASLR, address space layout randomization, control flow guard, and then safe SEH. Now, the one thing I note here about safe SEH, it only works for 32-bit executables. The rest of these work for both 32 and 64-bit. So let's talk about PowerServer new features. It now supports Windows authentication. The authentication modes are anonymous, which means that no credentials need to be provided. Integrated, so it will use the current Windows logon. And if there's a problem with the current Windows logon, it will prompt for a logon or user password, which means that it will prompt for credentials. It will not look at see what the current Windows logon is. The Cloud App Get and Cloud App Set methods now can be used to get or change the authentication mode. And this is a new session creating event that can be used to modify the settings before the session is created. It now supports secure connection strings. This was something that was added in 2025 for desktop apps so that you didn't have to worry about the database passwords being or other connection information being in clear text, either in an INI file or in PowerScript. So that feature is now supported in PowerServer as well. There's more license details shown in the PowerScript project so that you can easily see which licenses and other details are being used, and it ensures you're using the correct license. And it supports uninstall for the application, silent uninstall for the application. There's multilingual support. The DataWindow to model conversion has been optimized. What happened before this release is that if there was if there were multiple data windows with the same name and different pibbles, it would end up crashing the compilation. So now what happens if there's more than one data window in the project with the same name, only the first one is looked at, the others are ignored. The developer can increment the launcher version, and that will cause the launcher to automatically upgrade. Both applications and the Cloud App Launcher now install into the same directory. They used to install in two separate directories before. Let's talk about PowerClient. So once again, built-in support for Windows authentication and multilingual support, and incrementing the launcher version and the change to the location of the application and cloud launchers so that they are in the same directory, and the support for silent uninstall. Basically, all these were mentioned under PowerServer, PowerClient being sort of based, I guess you would say, on PowerServer, shares a lot of those enhancements. So that's all for the slides. I've got just a few examples of some of these features I discussed I was going to show you, and then we'll move on to questions and answers. So we talked about a lot of enhancements as I went through the slides. There's 5 that I thought were visually impactful enough that I wanted to show here during the demo. And the first one, obviously, then would be the theming of the IDE. So this is what you're going to see when you fire up PowerBuilder 2022 R2. By default, it comes with the light flat theme enabled, which doesn't look a whole lot different than Do Not Theme, except that you'll notice that the toolbar buttons here are flat. So that's the main thing I notice using the light theme. But if we go to Tool, System Options, and change that to dark, so now we truly have a dark theme here for the PowerBuilder IDE. So that's the first thing I want to show you. The second thing I want to show you is code formatting. So I've got some PowerScript here. What I'm going to do here is go in and hit back tab a few times. And that basically removes all the indenting. And now I'm going to say code format document. And now the code has been reformatted with all the proper indenting. And you can do the same thing with a selection. So I could select a block of text, go code formatting, and say format selection, and it would format just that selection. So if you want to have a nice consistent formatting to your PowerScript, now it's really easy to do. The third thing I wanted to show you was a dynamic DPI. And to do that, we need to have an executable. So here's an executable I've created in PowerBuilder, and I can use the getDPI function to tell me what the current DPI setting is. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the scaling of my monitor here so that it will force a DPI change. So you see now that the window resized smaller and the DPI setting changed. And I got this value by wiring the DPI changed event. And let me scale it up some. So there it is scaled up. And now let me put it back on the original setting. Okay, so that's dynamic DPI scaling. The next thing I wanted to show you was scalable vector graphics image files. This image on the top here, now it says Elevate 2021 because that just happens to be some image I found that contained the word Elevate, and that was available in SVG format. This doesn't have anything to do with Appian. I just wanted to use the word Elevate. So anyway, this is a PNG up at the top. This is an SVG down at the bottom. And let me resize the window. And what you'll notice here, notice how the PNG file is getting these blurred edges, particularly when the lines are at an angle there. Meanwhile, the SVG remains sharp. So that is particularly now that we have dynamic DPI, and you're going to be seeing, potentially large changes to the size of images. The SVG gives us an opportunity to embed images that will scale properly and without distortion. The last thing I wanted to show you is the security. So if we go to the project file I used to compile that with, and we go to the security tab, notice we have the options for data execution prevention, address space layout randomization, control flow guard, and safe structured exception handling. And I've got those all checked. Now I've got a PowerShell script here that I can run on that compiled application. And see, it shows me AS, LR, DEP, Safe SEH, and Control Flow Guard are all actually enabled on that executable. If we went over here and to the general, and we decided we were going to do a 64-bit rather than a 32-bit compilation, when we go back to the Security tab, notice that Safe SEH is disabled, unchecked and disabled. That's because Safe SEH is only applicable for 32-bit applications. Okay, so that was the 5 things I wanted to show you, and so let's go back for Q&A. Okay, before we get to question and answers, we're going to talk about connecting with the community. The best way to do that is through community.appian.com. There's a lot of resources there. In particular, there's a Q&A section where you can ask questions and get answers from the community. And now let's have our own question and answer.
Now is Q&A time. Welcome to join our live Q&A Zoom meeting with the presenter. You'll find the Zoom meeting link at the top of the chat panel and also in the resources area below. Just click and join us live. You can enter the meeting from the Zoom app or your browser. Just type your name and click Join. You'll be in a waiting room until the meeting starts, and you'll join automatically once it begins. Now that you're in, you have 10 minutes to ask the presenter any questions about this session. Don't miss the chance.